I know, back so soon. Love it. But what are we going to talk about in this one? This one's going to be about something I observed when I was organizing my brother's bucks party because he's getting married soon. And I was surprised because he made me, or, he asked me, he was like, do you want to be the best man? And I was taken back by that because, well, not that I would say no or anything, but it was more like he has a really close best friend that I thought, of course he would make that best friend his best man, but in the end he didn't, so it ended up with me being the best man, so I had to organize some things, one being the Bucks party. Now, it doesn't really have much to do with that. It's more just something I noticed about my brother and something that's obvious, like something that he's been so focused on, which I think has had an impact on him in a negative way and has limited him in many respects. Now, my brother, to give him some context, my brother is incredibly talented. He's really good at what he does for his work. In fact, he just constantly gets promotions every year or two, and he constantly has more responsibilities and more things that he has to handle just because every single time he gets a new assignment or a new role, he ends up just kind of doing such a great job that they have no choice but to kind of move him up because he's just doing so well, and all sorts of other reasons. But he definitely puts in the effort and he puts in the miles. But what it has meant, or at least this is what I think it has meant, seeing based off what I saw at the Bucks, or going through the planning of the Bucks, this is what I saw, that he may have limited himself in the capacity that he was so focused on work that in when it comes to the social connections that he has, many of them are still framed or linked solely to his high school days. So it's almost a little bit like, think about like a time capsule. It's like his work expertise and connections and things like that has nothing but improved over his time since leaving high school, finishing high school and stuff like that, and has gone on and he's excelled and done great. But when it comes to his social connections and who he has friendships and relationships with, it's almost been in like this time like stasis ever since he's kind of left high school, because a lot of them, but besides a handful of people, like most of them are still linked to his high school days. And when we were trying to organize it, when I was because I was the main one trying to organize it, we were going to this small town which essentially it didn't have any sort of supermarket or anything like that. There was like a tiny little like local grocer, but we were there for 4 days. That was the other crazy thing, is my brother wanted it from Thursday to Sunday, which I was like, that's pretty long for a Bucks weekend. But I was like, it's his thing, it's his Bucks, so it's his wedding and stuff like that. Like, I'm not gonna tell him no, so that's what we did. But we're in the middle of essentially bumfuck nowhere in Australia, down south, south of Sydney by about a couple hours. And the next major town that has like a supermarket or anything is like an hour away, or maybe like 45 minutes, an hour away. So, and we were going to be in no state, we were going to be so sideways that there was no way anyone was hopping in the car and driving. We wouldn't even be able to back out of the driveway. That's how fucked up, that's how cooked we were going to be by the end of this, by the end of this weekend. And so knowing that and thinking that and being the one planning it, I set it up so that we were going to I was going to go overboard on food, go overboard on alcohol, so that there was never going to be a situation where anyone had to go or leave the house, because it was a really nice house, really spacious, really. It had an in-house, inside fireplace and stuff like that. It was great. But I wanted to make sure that we would never run out of anything, and there'd always be more snacks or food or drinks or whatever, right? So in the end, I was planning on it being a certain amount, and for the most part, when I told the people, told the friends that my brother wanted, invited. So I was thinking about what word I should use for a second. I was like, Invited. Yeah, that's the one. God, can you tell I actually write short stories? Jeez. What was I saying? Yeah, so he told me who he wanted to invite. So I invite them, and I tell them it's going to be this much, this is the price. And then the two of them, the few of them that I already had a suspicion, I was like, I know for a fact these dodgy, types are definitely not gonna they're gonna kick up a stink, because any single time you organize a paid event, there's always gonna be certain people that are like, man, it's pretty expensive, man, I just don't think it's worth it. And this is exactly what these people did. I've been to a couple, their messages were the things like, I've been to a couple Bucks weekends before, and it's never that expensive, something's not adding up. And I'm like, fuck. And they're the type of people that you can tell they're very doubtful and suspicious of that price and of what I was putting forward, because they're shifty and dodgy people themselves. So because they're thinking, hey, wait, if I was charging that kind of price, I'd be doing someone in. I'd be I think what they were thinking was, there was a budgeted amount, and then there was the amount that I was charging, and then the difference I was going to pocket. I think that's what they were thinking I was doing, because in their shifty little, piece of shit mind, that's what they would have been doing if that's the price they would have been charging. That's what they would have been doing. But I tried to explain, no going overboard on alcohol, and I gave all the reasons, and I'm like, look, it is what it is, but these people are not the type of people you want to hang around. One, I've never liked those few people. They've never really been they're not trustworthy people. But Aaron's kept on to them and it has invited them to his bucks and invited him to his wedding, because in his mind he's like, oh, we're friends, right? Because he's thinking back through all these days of his high school days and the on and off times he's seen them throughout the years. Because don't get me wrong, he has seen them. It's not like their last contact was when they were 18. They've seen them they've hung out and with all those people, with all the people he invited, he's hung out throughout the years. But it's only just now and after what happened with these bucks that he's the pennies dropped, and he's going, oh, maybe these people that I've known for 2 decades aren't actually have got my best interests at heart. Because one of them, the day before the event, or a day into the event, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning, he sends my brother a message or a screenshot. He sends me an image saying, oh man, I've gotten a COVID positive test, I can't come. And this is one of the guys complaining about the money. And then so my brother checked the details of the image he sent, and it was actually a screenshot. So what that guy had done is obviously looked up online or something, an image of a positive COVID test, and he'd taken a photo of it, taken a screenshot of it, and then sent it off to my brother, going oh yeah, sorry man, can't come, I can't pay for it. And what's even worse about this situation is that those friends, or that my brother invited and were kicking up a stink about the cost, my brother knows for a fact that they go out partying almost every weekend, and they blow all sorts of money. And so what finally kind of sparked in my brother's head, and the kind of almost mini epiphany he had was oh wait, there's these people I've known and somewhat considered my friend, at least to some capacity, a friend for almost 2 decades now, and they can't even be bothered to spend a few $100s to come to my bucks, even though in many respects, and I don't know why this is just my brother's style, him and his partner's style, they are spending a truckload of money on this wedding. So these pricks are complaining about oh, it's a few $100s for the box for a weekend, it's a bit expensive. But it's just not only would you have had accommodation, alcohol, all food, everything covered, not just that, on top of that, for the not just the box weekend, but my brother is paying exorbitant amounts of money, so everyone the wedding is going to be amazing. Even that, even if you in your theory lose a little bit of money on the bucks side of things, you would have made it up in droves on the wedding side of things when it comes to the wedding costs. But these people are just not real friends and are kind of just assholes. And I think that's the point, and the thing I was trying to get to is that don't I guess, and it can be not just work, it can be all sorts of things, you know, it could be sport or, you know, fitness or whatever it necessarily be, or a hobby or something like that. But don't be so hyper focused into one thing where where you cut off or you don't expand your social connections in other realms or just in life. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a really good thing for me that I've enjoyed is that I've had different groups of friends throughout different periods of time, and the thing is I like all of them, and all of them are people I can enjoy with, and I only tend to hang out with. I'm kind of that as a person. I will only actually ever hang out with you often if I like you. Like if I think we're friends and shit, and like, you know, I actually enjoy your company. Meanwhile, so I don't really have many hanger on, like, you know, fair weather friends, but unfortunately my brother does, because that's all. Well, he has a few because that's all he's had since, you know, high school, and there's been a few additions here and there, but I think he's been so focused on work that it definitely, I think, has impacted his social net. I was going to say network, but that just sounds so typical, so I was going to say net. Or just the opportunity. Oh, God, it's not the right word. Opportunities, net or network. It's more just like the stock of people that he can draw from who he would consider friends is very small and restrained to essentially remnants of his high school days, which, don't get me wrong, I have high school friends as well, or like, you know, friends from high school, but you got to meet new people. Like you got to meet new people. You got to come across, you know, different people with different experiences, different life stories. I think that's what adds to the richness of your life, and it's hard for me to explain it, but I can see in my own personal experience, I can see looking at Aaron and my brother and shit, that he hasn't had that as much, or he's kind of limited himself in some capacity. Don't get me wrong, he can always change. It's always changeable. It's always something you can fix. But I think that's something to just be aware of, that don't fall into one clique and think that's the one group that you're going to be in forever and all that. Find be accepting of new people. Like, try it, like, you know, don't be resistant against it, like, and be open to that kind of thing, because not saying you can't keep your old friends 100%, like, but you can definitely, don't be afraid to make new friends. I guess that's the new point. I guess that's the end point. Make new friends. It always helps. So, see you soon.